Everyone, Charlie here. Welcome back to One Cup of Japan. It is January 1st, 2021, about 9:30ish in the morning. I'm heading over to the big shrine, I suppose, in the area to do the first prayer of the year. And well, it's a bit of a exciting day, I suppose. I suppose New Year's can always be an exciting day. Let's take this really snowy side street. It snowed a lot here. Basically it snowed for a good 12 hours or so. And we're lucky because we don't have so much. Maybe, I don't know, we've got about a foot on the ground in the places where it's really stacked up, but not so bad, not as bad as a lot of places. But of course it is the new year. It's January 1st, so that's kind of exciting in its own right, I suppose. It always brings with it, if not a feeling of excitement and happiness, at the very least, I think, a sense of something new. For me, this year, this is incredibly true. More true than usual, I should say. Hopefully the wind's not too bad today. It's a little bit windy out here. For me, this holds truer this year than other years because I am this week I'm spending at my in-laws' house. Before, how can I say? Of course, I'm spending it with them because of the holiday, but also I'm slowly moving into the house. So it's really exciting to be able to use my new office for the first time. It's exciting to kind of start to get used to that new life of living with my in-laws, basically, right? And all the adjustments that's going to require. And not only is the house new, but the city too is new to me. I mean, I've been here a couple times. This city is called Takifu. It is, well, the other city I was living in, well, I still live in, is called Sabai. And there's about 80,000 people who live there. I've worked there for the past 6 years. I'm gonna continue working there, but in my own company. But moving here to Takifu, where it's smaller, but it somehow seems, well, it's smaller and the population is lower. It seems to be more, in some ways, more active. And I think that's probably because of, at least partly because of where my house is. It's like there's a Starbucks within just a couple minutes of my house. There's pizza shops, there's fast food, there's game centers, a lot closer. Not that they were ever far away from me when I was living in Sabae. But all this to say that it's like really an exciting time, you know? There's just a lot changing. Now, I asked you guys on Patreon what you wanted to see discussed in this, our newest One Cuppa. And the vote said that you wanted to hear about starting a family in Japan. Now, not having started a family yet, I will of course talk about this, but this coincides well with a YouTube comment that I got some weeks ago, basically asking me whether I felt more excited or nervous about starting a family here. And this road is not good for walking. Let's go this way. I'm just causing a problem right now, so, or potentially going to cause a problem, so let's avoid the issue. Can we cross the street here? As I say, I'm just gonna, so I'll respond to that question and kind of kill two birds with one stone here, but of course, as I said, I'm moving in now, starting a new chapter of my life. I'm moving in with my in-laws and starting a new business and all that kind of thing. And with that comes, now I feel enough security that I can start. It's a beautiful road. So if I don't slip and fall on my ass on camera, that would, well, I don't want to do it in general, but particularly on camera, I suppose. Salon up here on the left. You can see maybe some kind of izakaya or something up here that has all these bottles of beer stacked outside in these crates. But as I was saying, it started to give me enough security where I can kind of move on from the phase of being like, oh, I really want kids and like, when should we do it? But in kind of like a very general, like, well, we want to do it, but we can't do it now kind of sense. And now we find ourselves in a situation where, now we find ourselves in a situation where we can actually move on to the next stage of that, which is actually talking about it seriously, right? So with that has to come serious introspection. Now, I suppose, to answer the question completely honestly, I am both nervous and excited about it. Just generally, the idea of having my own children is both exciting and terrifying. Right? Every child I've taken care of up until this point, eventually they go home, right? They're here I see them for an hour at the most, and then they go home. That kind of thing. Have I already arrived here? I thought this was much farther. Right, they go home, and then I can just sort of, if they were poorly behaved that day, I can just sort of rinse my hands of it and then greet them with open arms the next week, kind of thing, right? But, so there's those general kind of things, but I think the question that was asked of me, and the question that maybe I want to speak to a little bit more in this episode is, are there things specific to Japan that make me nervous about starting a family here specifically? Oh no, this definitely is the place, I think. I've been here in a couple of years. So I suppose I'll start it with the things that make me excited, or the things that I feel safe or comfortable with. There's snow falling off in like huge volumes from this rooftop over here. So I suppose the first thing I could say is that I feel quite comfortable with the fact that, despite the fact that particularly over the next 6 months, as I'm really probably much longer than that if we're not being naive, as I'm getting this business off the ground and, trying to put some pillars under it to support it, that I am going to be very, very busy. And probably that's not as though it's going to stop, because it's going to be me and one other person running this business. It's not as though that's going to go away. And while I am concerned about the fact that that will limit, at least during the week, the amount of time I can spend with my wife and my kids and my family in general, this is beautiful. This is where we're going to go to do Hatsumode, but let's walk a little bit more this way. We can go towards the station. What was I saying? But despite that, check this out. There's these sprinklers on the road that help keep the road free of ice and water. These are kind of filled with some sort of saline solution. but they're your enemy when you're walking because they just want to soak you. But so anyway, despite the fact that I'm going to be busy and there is a support structure here, sort of built both into the sort of the traditional structure of things, I suppose, as far as the family goes, but also as far as the social safety nets go that make it easy, I think, in some ways, to have kids. By which I mean, for instance, by living, for example, with my family, which is not something I ever would have considered if I was living in the States. Like, I love my parents to death, truly, but the idea of trying to like sustain a marriage and sustain a marriage and all that kind of thing while and raising children while also living with my while also living with my parents is just, that's a non-starter for me. Here it's just sort of what you do. Not everybody does it. It's becoming less frequent apparently now, but that's what we're gonna do. So there's that, and because of that, right, there'll be grandparents there that can more easily help take care of my kids. Just generally there's a greater structure. And beyond that, kind of related to this, more on the social safety net kind of things, is that very, very close to my house there are a number of government-run free child care centers that my future kids can go to quite cheaply or for free. And so just generally speaking, there's just a lot more things that would help me, I feel, to help take care of my kids than in the States, where it's like, I feel it's more of a situation where it's have to be like, well, you fucking figure it out, it's not our problem kind of thing. This is not, of course, a statement saying that I think treatment of children here is perfect and all that kind of thing, or education is perfect, because that's not the case. But as far as actually raising kids and having support for that, I feel it's a significantly better situation in some ways. Beyond sort of like the social things too, there's some kind of financial boons, some financial benefits to having children here. Specifically, this kind of varies based on city and based on prefecture from what I understand. But for example, in Fukui City, which is where I imagine we will, where our children will be born, like 100% of the cost of labor, of giving birth is either paid outright by the government or later reimbursed, that kind of thing. There's so many people out there. There's young women taking their like first prayer of the year selfies over in front of the shrine, which seems a little bit tasteless, but anyway, I don't care. Religion, I don't care. Let's go this way. So there's that. And it's just something that you couldn't even imagine, like in the States, right? Like, it's not as though it's going to be cheap for us to raise a kid, right? It's not like somebody's going to come in with a magic wand and with one swipe is going to take away all the cost of child rearing or something like that. That's not the case, but the fact that from their birth, we're not going to be burdened with a couple $1,000s or more of debt just because we dared to want to have a family is a really big boon. In addition to that, again, I'm sure this varies based on locality. Sumimasen, ohayou gozaimasu. based on locality and that kind of thing, but where we're going to be, like, there's also like a significant like monthly support system. I think, like, I know some of my friends who have kids and live in other prefectures receive like a $200 a month stipend from the government to help per child, I think, to help with raising their kids. And that's a really great system, I think. $200 is not enough for sure, but it's better than nothing for sure. So, I mean, I suppose I could talk about things like that for a long time. And to be honest, my knowledge of this is sort of just really starting to expand, because I'm only, as I say, just recently in a position where I can sort of take the idea of taking responsibility for another human's life seriously, right? So, yeah. So I suppose those are the things that I feel confident about, or put me at ease a little bit about starting a family here. On the opposite end of things, there are certainly things that I feel, at the very least, concerned about. It is no secret here that when we have children, my rights will be significantly less than my wife's. And that's based on two things. The first is the fact that typically the courts or whatever, if it comes to some kind of bad situation, will side with the mother. And there's also the second always present elephant in the room, which is that I am not Japanese. So that scares me a little bit, because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not planning to have a failed marriage. I'm not planning to any of that at all. But I think you'd be a fool not to think about it, right? Like, especially when you see all these horror stories. That's why I don't recognize it. It used to be that over here was the Takifu City Hall, I think, and just recently all of this open space here was that building, and now it's been removed, and so I don't recognize it at all. I was just confused as to where the station was. But anyway, so I just want to make sure we're not getting our signals crossed here. I of course have no intention of failing. Oh, here we go. Here's the snow. Of having a failed marriage or anything like that, but it's something to be considered, right? So that, what was I saying? Just because, I mean, you do see these situations where, like, you know, God forbid things don't work out between the mom and dad, and then, like, dad doesn't have the visa to stay in the country or something like that, and I'm sure opposite situations have occurred, and the dad keeps petitioning these courts to get, you know, visitation rights at the very least to see his child, and the court's like, meh, right? And the court kind of always sides with the Japanese party, at least from the stories which I have seen. So there's that, you know. And so, yeah, that's a little bit scary. It's a little bit scary. It's snowing. Interesting taxi day. Pushing it. Right. But beyond that, to be honest, there's two other things that I suppose have me a little bit concerned. The first is education. Having a family here, how can I say? Japan consistently has how to approach this. I think globally, Japan has an image of excellent education, and I think in some ways the education system is excellent. Like, there are a variety of things that my kids, my students, I should say, can do that I just know that I've either forgotten or I never learned, and they're still like in the 3rd or 4th grade of elementary school, right? Like I don't want to say it's common for the sake of my own pride, but that's a thing, you know, that's a thing. And so in some ways I think that's true. The education can be excellent here, but my personal opinion often sort of goes towards the idea that the approach to education is something like just shove as much information as we can into somebody's head until they take a test, then they forget everything they just learned, and then we repeat the process, right? That's why, despite the fact that people take years and years of English, there's no real practical test of that, right? People just forget, they can't speak, maybe they can read and that kind of thing, but they'll never learn to speak, or they'll forget how to speak very, very quickly. What is this accent I have today? Maybe it's just because my tongue is cold. And also just looking at how much stress these kids have, particularly from the time that they join junior high school, where it's just like, okay, study. Lots of homework. Okay, here's the next test. Repeat the process. Oh, and I still have to go to club practice. And then maybe I get 5 hours of sleep a night, and that's just sort of normal, right? Considered kind of normal. Let's go over here so we're not too much in the way. You're now at Takifu Station, by the way. I'll show you guys in a second. Stand under here, I suppose. There's a birdie. Is he still there? Oh, he went up a little bit. So, and just looking at that stress and seeing how tired my 13 and 14-year-old students are, that worries me. And it's not to say that when I was in high school, I felt like I always, that I thought that the system was perfect and that there was not unfair stress put on students and that kind of thing. I don't feel that way, but it's just the amount is different. The level is different, I think. So that bothers me, right? Is this the best place for my child to have an education? And not just education in a formal sense, but also, is this the best place for them to be reared, to be raised? raised if I want them to be a conscientious citizen of the world, right? When it's 2030 or 2035, whatever the year will be, is this the best place to do it? But also I think I'm putting a little bit too much responsibility on place and not enough responsibility with myself and my partner, because a lot of that, most of that, right, is going to depend on us. Okay, looks like it's died down a little bit. We can go out here now. Can we go this way? Looks like we can. We'll see a train coming. Look over here. So anyway, before I go on to the last thing, right, this is Takefu Station. You can see Takefu Taxi over there. That's Al Plaza. It's like a shopping center. I think it's basically all through Hokuriku and Kansai. We're gonna walk over that way a little bit, past the Koban. I hope we don't get stopped for filming in public. Let's actually go this way. Not filming in public, but being a nuisance. Recently there's a problem with what they call meiwaku-kei YouTubers, which are basically YouTubers who make videos where they're annoying the shit out of people or causing social issues. Causing social harm, I should say. What was I gonna say? Hope the wind is okay. Let's add to that. Let's just go past the Koban. What was I gonna say? Right. So the last thing, let's see, we talked about parental rights, we talked about education. And the last thing is something I brought on myself by finding myself in this situation, I suppose. Setting up the circumstances to find myself in this situation, but my biggest concern is not really anything to do with Japan as a place, as much as it has to do with my being in a foreign country, right? Particularly because of the time difference here and how much time and how much money it takes to get here. There's a lot of concern that I have that my parents and my family will not be able to have a relationship with their with our grandchildren, right? That bothers me. It's something I've thought about as of about 3 years ago when I started dating my partner, who I'm planning to have children with, right? Like, I started thinking about it at that point, and now that we're here and it's more serious, of course, I'm thinking about it more seriously. And it's just like, this is where I need to be for myself. And it is, of course, a selfish decision, but it's also, that's how I feel, and this is where I need to be, and this is where I need to live my life, so this is where I'm going to be, you know? And my wife needs to be here. She needs to be here for her family, for a variety of reasons which we don't need to get into. And as a result, my children need to be here, at least until they're grown adults, right? And they can go and do things for themselves, of course. But despite knowing all those things, I can't help but feel as though I'm robbing particularly my mother, but of course also my father, of grandchildren, right? My family, let's see, my older brother is 36 in April. I'm 34 in March. My little brother is 24 in March. So my little brother, holy shit, my little brother's 24. Oh my God. Yeah. And of course my little brother's got a lot of time to think about a family and all that kind of thing. But my mother, you know, neither of them are old. My father's not even 60 yet. My mother's 55, 56, something like that. So they're young, they got time and that kind of thing, right? But it's like, you know, they want kids, they want grandchildren, they want to be able to play with their grandchildren, that kind of thing. And it's like, there's a great sense of guilt. There was guilt just for me choosing to live here. And then, you know, I'm going to get emotional talking about this, but then also thinking about, you know, having a family and not having my parents there, to have a relationship with my kids. And not just that, you know, my not being able to see that in my parents' eyes and experience my parents' love through a different lens, through the lens of their child who now has his own family, that kind of thing. So that's what I worry about, right? And I feel like if I talk about it anymore, my nose is just running, by the way, there's no tears, but I feel like it's a precursor, so let's just stop there. Before we finish up here though, this is the kind of the main drag of Takefu proper. As you can see, it's not exactly hopping. Across the street here we have Akiyoshi. This is a yakitori chain that started here in Fukuoka. I think there's a couple in Tokyo and also in Kanazawa. But mostly this is a Fukui chain. Very delicious place, a little pricey, but the quality is excellent and the atmosphere is excellent, so I really recommend it. Again, this is Takefu Station from a different point of view. Over there, there's a kaiwas, there's a hotel, all that kind of shit. That is a big hotel, a big hospital. So there's a bit of stuff over here. All of like the big stores, like you'd have to go over that way about maybe 5 minutes by car, but then you get to like a lot of the stores that you would expect from bigger cities, which is really, really nice. Something that Shanghai didn't have. So it's an exciting time. But I hope this topic, anyway, getting back to it, that will prove, I hope it answers any questions that you guys had about this. Know that it's something that I put a lot of time and a lot of stress into thinking about. And I hope if any of you find yourself in the same situation in the future, that somehow this will be useful to you. So on that, this is the first one cuppa of 2021. This year, what are we gonna do? I talked about it on the live stream, but this year we're gonna pass, well, hopefully not just this, but at least past 2,000 subscribers. We're gonna pass 25 supporters on Patreon, and we're gonna get a lot of good shit made. So I hope you guys will look forward to that. Please have a very, very happy new year. Best to you and your family. Please, I can only ask for your continued support on my end, and please check out my Patreon and all that jazz. And yeah, ramble. See you guys soon. Cheers.